And welcome back to the third party of the Canon IId CLA series. I did some work behind the scenes because it's a part that takes quite a lot of time and quite a lot of fiddling and going back and forth, so I didn't want to bore anyone. What I did was I replaced the ribbons. These are pieces of the old ribbons. One of the two ribbons split in like 3 or 4 pieces. This is part of the other. This is how easily you can break it. Alright. I did pull quite hard on this part, so this one should have lasted a long time still. But I found that this part, so the one that was actually glued to the drums or to the rollers, was extremely soft. I mean, see, it broke in very small pieces, and that's why on the mat I have this one in several pieces, because I had to measure the length of the ribbon, which for the first curtain is 10 centimeters. I didn't replace the ribbons of the second curtain because I did the pull test and they seemed fine. Thickness wise, the old ones are 0.12 millimeters thick and the new ones are 0.13. It shouldn't matter, the two curtains are independent, so unlike the Zorkis, it really doesn't matter. Okay. Now, a good practice, a good practice method is to glue, or better said, to partially glue either the ribbons or the curtains or both when you are replacing them. Get everything back together, check to see that everything is working correctly, and only then do the final gluing. In my case, one of the two ribbons, meaning this one, was fully glued, so all around the roller, while the other one was glued in 2 little points. And I did this because the first one was actually glued to the original line. I scribed a little line where the initial ribbon was, and because I used the correct length and the correct attachment point, I have no fear that it's not what it should be. So the other one I glued in a position that kind of looked squared, so the edge of the curtain and the shaft would be parallel, but you can never be too sure unless you build a jig. So since I don't have a jig, I only used 2 little points of glue, got everything back together, and now I can check to see how the gap looks. Right now it looks pretty perfect. I don't think I need to shim anything, so it's correct, but my initial try was a bit skewed. Obviously for this part of the test I didn't replace any shims, so I need to put, actually the only shims that I got back were the shims between the drum and the two rollers. So I got those two shims back and I oiled the shaft, because I'm not removing these parts in the future. But I still need to replace these and these. Alright. And I will do that right now because I need to open it up again and glue the rest of the ribbon. Also, the position of the drum, actually the position of the shaft, which is basically the position of this roller in respect to the shutter crate, is like this. So this part should align, if you draw a line in the middle of it, should align with the corner of the shutter crate. That's a good landmark, so you know how to put this back before reassembly. Otherwise you might have to fiddle around and test several positions until you get it correct. Now, what does correct mean? Well, it means that in this position, when the shutter is cocked, this, so this spinning part, will align with the cutout in the ledge. If it doesn't, it will not work. Okay. Next, for the next step, I will need to actually remove the shutter curtains completely, because I still need to add those. And this is actually a good moment to appreciate the Japanese precision in manufacturing. Actually, not this moment, but when I will need to put them back, because in the Soviet cameras, getting those little nuts is a nightmare, while on the Japanese one, you simply put them in place and screw them on, and they fit. Alright, so this is the actual shutter. The curtains are original. They are a bit, how should I say, they kind of retained the shape of being rolled on a drum. But it's okay, they are flexible, they don't have any creases, they don't have any sign of dried rubber layer, because unlike the Soviet ones, these are made from a layer of rubber that's encased or sandwiched between two layers of silk. So I had no reasons to actually replace them, and as much as possible I avoid replacing the curtains. What I need to do is actually use a bit of oil on the bushings or the bushes. All right, and what I've noticed is the fact that they are not, they don't use stitchings, so only cement. what I didn't show you is this. So I used a 7mm flexi clamp to open this. Yeah, I totally forgot about it. And unlike the Soviet counterparts, where usually you find a lot of dried lubricant like glue inside, this one is completely clean and also dry. I will use a bit of Nye oil. I don't know if it matters or not. I don't know if it was oiled or not. I think it was back in the day, but I will use a bit anyway. For the cap of the first curtain, I made some indentations in a little pair of pliers just to make or to have an increased area that will grip on the cap. Obviously this should have been a lot larger, but I was going for the less is more approach. And it works. All right, so a bit of Nye oil. All right, and now I need to get everything back inside. So I usually keep, actually not usually, but always, I keep the crate like this. So right side of the camera towards me, drum and shaft up, and then I lower everything inside. At this point it doesn't matter how this one meshes with the gear, with this gear here. Then I pull on the second curtain. Now the second curtain should, the edge of the second curtain should overlap the ribbons of the first curtain, and then the first curtain with its shaft should be on top of the ribbons of the second curtain. Okay, and now I need to get this one under this shield and with the shaft inside the hole. Now I can shift it over a bit and get the little nut in place. All right. And now both curtains are in position. Some people prefer to work with the shutter untensed. Honestly, I really don't understand how. I always apply some initial tension to the rollers, and after everything is back inside the camera, I can release the tension and start my usual protocol for adjusting the curtains. So I will just add a couple of turns to each of the two curtains. Okay, and now adjust the position of that line, or the orientation of the line, so that it matches with the corner of the crate. That means I need to, but keep in mind, this adjustment is for the unwound position, so this should spin clockwise until it stops against this gear. And right now I need to move it back a bit, so I will pull on it until the gears slip and then turn it by one tooth and put it back. And right now they seem to be aligned. Okay. Now, before getting everything back inside the crate, actually not inside the crate back inside this, I will have to address, so I'll put this aside, I will have to address this part. And let's see. It's moving smoothly, but I just want to make sure everything is clean. So I'm going to remove this knob. See, lots of stuff underneath that. Then I need to remove these two screws that through this bracket hold in place the how is it called, one-way spring or something like that, I don't know. Okay, and now this entire thing can be lifted. This system is identical to what you can find in a Leica or what you can find in a Zorki 1, 2, 3, and 4. Everything seems nice. The only thing that's missing is a bit of lubrication on this bush. I also like to add a little bit of ballistol. So this is a more generic oil on this spring. I usually take the spring out completely, you simply pull on it. Because on the Soviet ones it is always full of that old grease, but on these Japanese cameras everything seems a bit dusty in the worst case scenario, but otherwise in very good condition, very clean. no signs of grease anywhere. Now I will use just a smidge of moly grease. Okay, and I will also remove this gear. The other two I might just leave in place because I'm not 100% sure what's the disassembly procedure, and I'm not all that keen to find out right now. So this is the gear, it's super clean and it has a very slight trace, of oil on it. So I'll just assume that the other two are in a similar state. All right, this one goes back in here, and then you need to get this little guy back. This is a bit fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, it's usually okay. Hmm. In later Leicas, they changed this system for something somewhat similar to the one in the Fed camera, in the Fed 2, like claw that locks the rotation of a gear, and that's a lot easier to work with. All right. All right, super smooth. For this little guy, although it's running smoothly, I will flush it with some naphtha and alcohol. This is something you'll never see in a Soviet. It actually spins. Okay, and then I'm going to try to leave just a bit of oil in between those two parts, so in between the aluminium part and this brass part. Ideally, I'd be using an oiler like those used in watchmaking and watch repair, but I don't have one, so I just have to do with this needle. Okay, and after I apply the oil, I also apply a drop or two of naphtha and alcohol that will somewhat dissolve the oil, allow it to flow, so it will reach all the areas of this bearing, and then the alcohol evaporates and leaves a fine film of oil. All right, and that's about it. I can now get this back. I've done the same flushing and oiling to this guy. Okay, so that I know is okay. In order to get everything back, you need to take a look at this cutout. So it has this elongated cutout. In the Soviets they have a round cutout, and that should be meshed with this pin. So I will keep this one like this, the pin towards me, okay, and then the two halves should match or should mate. And before that, I should also apply some lubrication inside this hole. Oh, and also let's not forget this. I think it's easier to get it back at this stage. So the fork goes down, this bit goes here, like this, and I will need to make sure I think I need to force it in just the way I forced it out. Okay, so now the drum is engaged in that slot because it can only move from here to here, and I need to make sure the end of this pin goes through this hole. Alright, and now I need to make sure that the two ends of the rollers engage in the little holes in the top plate that corresponds to them, and this is the tricky part because you can't really see much and you kind of need to feel for that hole and move this thing around until it engages inside the hole. I'm a bit to the back, and now and you can usually hear a popping sound when they've engaged, and obviously you need to engage both. So all right, come on. Okay, and right now the tip of this little piece should be in such a position that when you slide the brake in, the tip can engage the cutout in the brake. So it basically does B. When you move the brake aside, the second curtain closes. So right now I know I am in the correct position and I can get these screws back. This is probably the most fiddly part, except for the actual replacement of the curtains. But that's a matter of getting everything squared. This is a matter of getting lots of pieces in the correct place at the correct, not at the correct time, at the same time. And it can be quite a pain. And imagine how it is to get these components back together when you also have ball bearings that are not encased. So you need to watch out for like 11 little, very little balls that if for some reason like gravity fall to the ground, you will probably never find them. Okay, so I've got two of the screws back and basically the shutter is now in one piece. And before moving on, I need to make sure that I can get this thing back. So top part in. God damn, that was fucking easy. Why did I have so much trouble getting it out? Ah, Okay, so this was easy. You just need to get the point, the tip of this inside that bloody hole. Like this. This is the position. So now I can get these little guys back on top of this screw, and that little spring will keep this pressed down inside its correct position. Then this one can go back and so on. All right, so some progress has been made. I also need to make sure that this baffle is not rubbing against anything, but otherwise things are looking good. Okay, so now that the difficult part is over, I can conclude this video, and I will see you next time in part 4. That will simply be putting things back, and then I'm going to talk about the actual adjustment of the shutter. I'm going to use the Leica method. I won't be able to show you the actual adjustment procedure, but I will try to explain it as much as possible and as much in depth as possible. And yeah, that will be that. Thank you. See you next time.